Henry Chamberlain, who is the president and CEO. Sorry, president and CEO of BOMA International. Henry Chamberlain directs BOMA International's staff in support of the association's 87 U.S. locals, BOMA Canada, and its 11 regional associations and 17 international affiliates. As you all know, BOMA International is the leading trade association for commercial real estate professionals for more than 100 years, and it represents the owners, managers, service providers, and other property professionals of all commercial building types, including office, industrial, medical, and corporate and mixed use. BOMA International is the partner individuals in the commercial real estate industry choose to maximize their careers, organizations, and assets. Its mission is to advance a vibrant commercial real estate industry through advocacy, influence, and knowledge. So prior to joining BOMA, Henry was director of communications for the Gannett Company during the launch phase of the nation's newspaper, USA Today. He began his career in Washington, working in the press office of a national presidential campaign. He is a member of the Real Estate Roundtable, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Association Committee of 100, fellow of the American Society of Association Executives, and member and past president of the National Capital Chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Henry Chamberlain for more information on BOMA International.
Well, thanks, Melanie, and I'm going to take over your screen now.
Yep.
But thank you very much for that introduction. It's been, it's just a pleasure working with you on the D&I stuff. I mean, diversity and inclusion's been a great effort on our part. So it's been great working with you on all of that stuff. So thank you very much, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
And Rick, you and I go back years and years and years. What you're doing, the way you share, work with the other BAEs, collaborate around the country has really been a big contributor to our success. So it's always nice to come in and see you. Maybe I'll do a couple of things. One, I am going to introduce Don as he does his portion. We're going to do advocacy at the back end. So you will get to meet him and then hear from him. We have a nice agenda going, not only last year, but there's just a lot going on right now. I just have to also say DC right now, as you know, is in a lockdown. So we are working remotely. In fact, for those of you that have been to the BOMA office, which is about 5 blocks north of the White House, we're on the edge of the perimeter security for the White House with National Guard right by us, not to mention the National Mall and the Capitol building for those that have been there over the years. So just sort of a strange time in Washington. I just say a couple things on the winter business meeting. You do need to register. Free doesn't mean you can just show up. So please go to the website and register. It's a great program. The Southern Regional meeting is going to be Tuesday morning at 10:30. So you can meet some of your colleagues from around the region at that. Our Board of Governors, if you're kind of a BOMA business junkie, Board of Governors is Tuesday afternoon at 3:30. Always interesting on our priorities. As Melanie mentioned, we've got the town hall on Wednesday, which is going to be terrific discussion about what we're doing around diversity and inclusion. Also an open forum with the local associations around the country on what they're doing as we expand the effort. And then the government affairs committees, all those different advocates from around the country will be meeting Wednesday afternoon at 2:30. So if you're really into the issues like Amanda is, think about the government affairs committees. And it's interesting, Amanda, listening to you talking about limited liability, the debate always becomes, well, it's not tort reform. We're talking about limited protection for people doing all of the right things. So it seems like a simple concept, but it's not in Washington. So I know that Don's going to talk about that a little bit. We've had a lot of success on the state level, and that's expanding. So still battling that on the federal level. But let me jump in on a couple things. One is, Rick talked about all the things we did in the past year. I think it's always good to pause back and look at how we elevated our game from a legislative standpoint on a host of issues. We got out lots of content and information that was actionable, people using it in their businesses, getting out of buildings, managing the facilities as people were coming back to work, emphasizing health and wellness, all the good stuff that's out there. How do you work with your tenants? What do you tell them? all of that was actionable material that people leveraged up and used in great ways. It also became great fodder for conversations around what are we doing, who's got the best examples of leveraging up new technologies, new practices. In Washington, we're still sub 10% occupancy. So a lot that people are still learning about how do we convince people they can safely get back. And while we were doing that, we were reaching out to a whole new audience. We talked about up front here. We had over 40,000 people visit our website, just the BOEM International, not yours, not all the others. 40,000 people to the website, 30,000 downloads of our documents that they were using with their teams. We had over 15,000 people go to our webinars. So as a business network, as a strategic business partner, we did a heck of a job last year. And I think we should pause and think about that, because in this virtual environment, we created incredible value. I would say equal to even a little more than the previous year. And the marketplace came together around BOEM in ways that we're going to leverage up going forward. So a lot to be proud of. When you look at the overall economy, no surprises here, but the industrial marketplace still doing great. I mean, last year, 300 million feet was absorbed. Industrial, warehouse, distribution centers. I ordered the new Eric Larson book for my book club yesterday, and it was on my doorstep in 2 hours. It's just unbelievable, the logistics that they're building for all of that around the country. So industrial real estate wasn't like the overall economy. Rental rates around the country approaching $6 a foot. Vacancy rates are sub 5, and some markets sub 2. So a whole different picture there than the office market, where nationally vacancy is approaching 16%. We think it's going to probably level off something in the mid 17s is the best thinking, but probably another 150 million square feet are going to be given back this year in the marketplace. So we've got some work to do and some settling out. Markets like San Francisco, of course, where people have been moving out to smaller cities, Salt Lake City, Nashville, and the rest. Sublet market in San Francisco is 3% now, if you can imagine. So, you know, when you look at where the recovery is going to take place, markets like yours, it's going to happen sooner. Smaller cities, it's going to happen sooner. Places like New York, San Francisco, Seattle, it's going to take them longer to rebuild. But everybody on the office side is expecting to start rebuilding the second half of this year and start to get those vacancy rates down. So some work to do there, some lease issues that I'll talk about as well. Of course, medical office buildings, healthcare facilities, doing great. For the most part, they stayed open through the pandemic. Optional surgeries, outpatient procedures were taking place other than some blips in markets for a little bit of time. But medical, which is a big part of us, doing extremely well. And of course, mixed use, other than the restaurant piece, even most of the small retail has survived by curbside pickup and all the rest. And I find it fascinating that the retail numbers for this year are expected to be the same as last year, which matched the year before as people went online to pick up their merchandise. And people have been saving a lot. So the feeling is that as the economy starts to recover and people feel a little better about it, we get our shots, we get back to work and all the rest, that there's going to be some spending this year. So GDP was projected to be something around 4% this year. Some are thinking 5%. Stimulus, depending on the size of it, expectations that could add 1% or even a little more. So there's a lot of optimism that the back half of the year, we're really going to start to build back. And if you look at the employment numbers, while they got softer the last month, a lot of that was restaurant related. Some of that was big box related. Service jobs are coming back and people are being rehired, which of course inures to tenants and who's going to come back into your space. So a mixed bag, but we're hoping back half of the year, the recovery, and we get back to it big ways in 22. When you look at BOEM International, just quickly, what we're concentrating on, more of this really good, timely, topical, actionable content, doing it digitally, searchably off of our website, working with the local associations like you. So continuing to be the thought leader in the industry on the best practices. Some of those issues like vaccinations and all, something that Don will talk about in his presentation, but people trying to figure out how are we getting back to work safely. more online education. We've partnered with BOMI on their live virtual learning network. We'll be doing more of that. We'll also be blending that obviously with classroom. We want to get back together in classroom education. So really being the place that people come to in commercial real estate for education and training is a big focus of ours. Future looking research like on the pandemic, which I'll talk about, and then talent, bringing the millennials and the Zs into the marketplace and mentoring them. And while we're at it, really working on diversifying our workforce, creating opportunity for more people in those marketplaces that's going to reflect the communities we're doing business with and the changing demographics of the country. We want to be a constructive player there and bring all that talent to jobs in real estate. So that's a focus. And we continue to obviously partner with the C-suite and senior leadership. So they want to invest in this organization so we can continue to grow our capacity to do a lot of different things. But I want to talk about the pandemic for a little bit here. There really is a psychology on the return, especially in the major metropolitan areas. The pandemic has to get under control. We need vaccines. We need herd immunity at a level that's going to give people a comfort level. And frankly, the schools really do need to reopen. You may have more reopen down there. Markets like Washington, everybody's remote unless it's private school. That's got to change. I look at the BOMA International staff, a third of my staff are teaching their kids at home. Well, that certainly locks them into their offices, their home offices, if you will. Schools have to reopen for a lot of reasons. Plus, the kids are losing time in their education and training. The mass transit piece gets back to vaccines and getting the numbers down around the pandemic. It's not that the bus lines and the trains haven't done a great job sanitizing, they have, but who are you riding with? People want to know that you're safe to be in the proximity with the people that are out there. And with these new variations, there's real wonders about transmission of the pandemic. So mass transit, we have to get back to some normal there to create that comfort level. And of course, creating healthy, well environments. So much conjecture out there on what we need to do around IAQ and ventilation and filtration and air exchanges and all the rest. And IAQ is going to be one of those that we've really got to leverage up the science going forward in ways that people are comfortable with. I also want to focus on some research we just did. If you have not downloaded a copy of this study, it's on the website. It's free. You paid for it. Your dues pay for all of this. So take advantage of it. But some really good news in the surveys. 74% say office space is vital to them to bring their teams back, to create those productive environments. The number is even higher for people that want to be in their offices. So we know people are going to be coming back. We want to get them back as quickly as we can and do all the right things to do that. But when you listen to a lot of the media story, a lot of electronic media, if you read the stories, they really talk about the present and people don't want to go back and they're fearful. Well, longer range, they are going to go back in big ways. And they're going to go back into cities because they like live, work, play, and they want to get back to that lifestyle. And we are going to get back to that lifestyle. So I keep telling people we need to be telling the longer range story about what's going on. Another great story here, 8 in 10 of the tenants we surveyed, and this was a study of over 3,000 tenants nationwide. So it was a big study. 8 in 10 really approve of what property management has been doing, how they've communicated what's going on in the buildings, the practices they brought into the buildings, how they're cleaning, how they're distancing, mask policies, all of it. People really appreciate that and have appreciated the proactive approach. And the tangible result of that, when you're thinking about leases, and that's going to be a puzzle going forward. The short-termers are saying, can I renew for a lease for a year or two? Can I have more flexibility in it? Longer range, they'll probably get back to some normal business. But 47% of those people said, because of the proactive role that you as property managers played over the last 10 months, I'm more likely to renew my lease. Well, that's very tangible. It really reinforces the work that you've been doing in tough circumstances through this horrible pandemic and recession. All that energy is going to be valuable to your companies and to the people you work with. So some good stories there. Um, there are other good stories about the return. One is, if you look at the positive investments to keep tenants safe, that's more likely to get people to come back. They like the fact that we're concentrating on HVAC, how the buildings are cleaned and all the rest. That inures to getting them back into those buildings. 62% are more positive on the culture and power of in-person human connection. They want that. They've been out 9 months. Here in Washington, we left our offices on the 13th of March. For the most part, people haven't gone back. They really, really, really want to get back into their offices. And that pent up demand means we've got to find ways to get people into those spaces safely and securely, but it's coming our way. So how do we get ourselves ready to do that? When you look at space, which is the big issue, right? So are they going to come back and want their same tenant spaces? Well, the majority do say that they're going to look and reassess their space usage. And if you look at this chart, the red line at the top is sort of the national aggregate number, everybody. The blue line in the middle is the folks who did okay last year actually did better business. Part of the economy really flourished last year, like we talked about online retail. Cold storage did great. Data centers did great last year. So the folks who did more revenue are the blue line. And the folks that suffered last year, lost revenue, maybe had to trim some staff are the black line that's down below. Well, they're looking at potentially reducing common areas. Now you can see that's a bigger issue with people who lost money, because right now they're looking to save money. But the others, it's a lesser issue. And of course, they've got to wrestle that with, want to create more flexibility so that we can distance when we need to, cubicle farms and all the rest. So what's going to happen with square footage per person is kind of interesting, and that'll be dovetailing with telework, right? How many days a week are people going to work from home, or are they going to be back 5 days a week? At least initially, people are going to phase that in, and we'll see. But I think common area is going to be a big discussion. Private office sizes, we've been looking at that trend for years. So that continues. Number of private offices, again, that continues. But in a health and wellness environment, what's the balance? What kind of variety do you want to have in your office? Of course, conference rooms, again, is a way to save money. But if you want to be the place that does business where people come to you, conference rooms with enhanced technology is something you're going to wrestle with. There's a real thought out there that an amenity going forward might be conference centers in buildings where tenants can just take advantage of going down there, having all the technology to do sales calls, to do some education, some training, and all the rest. So conference rooms are obviously going to be in play. And of course, hoteling, we've talked about for years. So lots of different issues there, but depending on your tenant mix, how they did last year, you're going to have different conversations with them. So there's some really good actionable information in this study, which goes back to there's going to be a lot of change going forward, right? I mean, I like to think of BOMA as the learning laboratory for commercial real estate, but what's the new normal going to look like in operations? A lot of discussion around touchless and hands-free. So where are people investing? What technology? What companies? How far are they going? Are they going to go to gesture and voice activation? Clearly, people are using more sensors. So how far are people going to go with technology? And that's going to be based on budgets, tenant mixes, ABC building, all of that. Cleaning, the same thing. How far are you going to go with cleaning? We can sanitize, certainly enough. We could use far UVC lighting as part of ventilation. Are you going to go to electrostatic or fogging methodology? Are you going to go to microband cleaning materials so that you can reduce the kind of exposure? How far do you go? What kind of investment makes sense long-term, even short-term? Of course, the virtual environments we talked about. And then health and wellness is going to be with us for a while. So are you going to look at certifications? Fitwell, well building. Are you going to pirate best practices, BOMA 360 and others, and create your own brand out there? And then how are you going to brand that with, how are you going to do, again, ventilation, bringing in outdoor air? Are you going to do some biophilic design? Are you going to do more outside space, those balconies? Maybe look at potential for finished rooftops and all the rest. So a lot going on there. And there's going to be experimenting with space design. Now, for years, we were reducing the size per person. When I started years ago, it was 250 square feet or more per person. We were driving towards 150 square feet or even less with hoteling. Well, does that 150 become 200? You create more flexibility in space. Some people work from home days a week. How is design going to change? We're certainly looking at that big time with Gensler and others. So these are all program ideas for this year and off into the future, because BOMA really is the learning laboratory for the industry, and we learn from each other. We share so that people can miss things that didn't work or find the best practices, and then we all go back to our offices and compete. And that's something that I've always liked about this organization. Very collaborative and very competitive at the same time. And we have a lot of fun while we're doing it. A couple other things, just reinforcing, it's great research on why people want to get back into offices, Cushman, Wakefield, Gensler, and others. But productivity, a big deal. The focus, having all your things there with your team makes you more productive. It also makes you much more collaborative because of all that informal time you have together. It allows you to bond in ways you can't do over Zoom or the rest. I get a lot of energy out of seeing people. I really would have loved to have flown down last night and had dinner, maybe breakfast this morning, done some sales calls, but a whole different dynamic between us. And then learning, we all learn from different programs or books or things that we've seen or education programs we're in, and we push each other. More continuous learning happens when we're in person. So all of those things are going to drive people back into offices. We are committed to Boston in July for our in-person annual conference, where all of this will be on display. So if you're thinking about it, at least pencil in Boston on your calendars. We're going to do that in person. But at the end of the day, this is an amazing reboot for the industry. You're lucky to have your association there in Jacksonville, all your colleagues around the country, because we're going to make some great things happen, create new brands and new business for ourselves going forward. So stay tuned for a lively 2021 and off into the future. But I did want to spend some time introducing Don Davis to you, and then let him talk about advocacy, because you guys are a real advocacy group down there, have a big impact, not only locally, but across the state of Florida, and big contributors to ours. Don Davis, he brings over 20 years of experience in successive staff positions, leading advocacy and government affairs efforts with a variety of groups, including Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Institute, American Society of Interior Designers, groups that have worked on similar issues to us. Most recently, the Council of Producers and Distributors of Agro-Technology. He brings a terrific experience, but also subject expertise to us on a variety of things that are important to us, particularly in this time. And I love continuous learning, but he took it to a new level in the past few years. He went back to school and earned his Juris Doctor from American University. So it's Don Davis Esquire. I get to have an attorney on staff, which I think is a wonderful resource to us. But with that, Don, I'm going to let you take over from here.
Okay, well, thank you, Henry. I appreciate the introduction, and I have done a great deal of work down in Florida. I particularly love Jacksonville because I like Jacksonville Beach. It's one of the best surfing spots, I think, in Florida on the coast there. So hopefully one day I'll be able to come visit and attend one of your meetings and spend the morning surfing. I wanted to start off just saying that, having just joined, I'm going through all of the things that BOMA has done over the last year and figuring out, what's been made available to members and what kind of programs are going on. And I have to say, this coronavirus resource and original response to this pandemic, this almost unheard of event, has just been outstanding. And I would guide everyone to these guidance documents to the website where these things can be downloaded. We have some very successful documents. The tenant FAQ was something that was the original response and has been, I think, very helpful to BOMA members in discussing all of these issues, preparedness for evacuations, managing through the pandemics. I think, as Henry noted, we've had over 30,000 downloads of these documents. And they're really there for your use, and we're going to continue developing more of these documents as they evolve and making them available to you. If I could have the next slide, Henry. So Henry's going to help me with the slides because we're, as he said, we're working remote, and it's always a challenge. So over the last year, I think the COVID-19 federal response has been great. There's been two significant pieces of legislation: the CARE Act, which was done earlier in the year, passed, I think, in April, and then HR 133, which was the legislation that passed at the end of the year. Of course, HR 133 had a lot of other things in it, dealing with ongoing government funding and that type of thing, but it did provide an opportunity to add other pieces of legislation that could be put in there, rolled up and passed. And there's a number of things that the BOMA staff worked tirelessly on last year, and really needs to be recognized. I think that this was just some great work. Particularly start with the Qualified Improvement Property Depreciation Act. And I think, as many of you know, in the tax bill that was passed in 2017, there was some language complication, which then changed leasehold improvements from the standard 15-year, from the 15-year that had been the norm, back to the 39-year standard depreciation schedule. And BOMA has been working for 3 years now, to try to get that corrected. And the great news is that in HR 133, that was corrected. The other issue that we see here is the 179D energy efficiency tax credit. And this has been made permanent. And actually, as Henry had noted, some of these issues I've been working on for years. When I was back with the Air Conditioning Refrigeration Institute, I worked with ASHRAE on this original legislation that made the legislation needed to be continue. But of course, it provides an energy efficiency tax credit if you have $1.80 per square foot, if you meet certain benchmarks beyond ASHRAE 90.1. But the problem with that has always been that it expired every year or every 2 years, or however they had crafted it for that particular period. So it made it very difficult to induce people to take advantage of it, because you never knew if you were going to get the credit or not. And so now this has been made permanent, and I think this is a huge win for the industry. I do believe that there's some ongoing work we're going to do with it. I think the ASHRAE levels that you need to go beyond could be reduced to a level that might incentivize more building owners to take advantage of it. But I think this has been just a really terrific addition to the legislation and the work that BOMA has been able to do on behalf of the members. The other issue that was included in the HR 133 was the extension of the Paycheck Protection Program. So if you all recall that trade associations, 501c6 organizations, as we're all organized, or 501c3s, but basically 501 organizations, were not allowed to take advantage of the Paycheck Protection Program. And the new legislation has expanded that. So you now are able to apply for those loans. There are some restrictions on it. For example, it's if you spent more than $1 million on lobbying in 1 year, or if you spent more than 15% of your budget on lobbying and receipts for lobbying, you may be excluded. But this really will now allow you to go to your local banks and apply for those kinds of loans to cover payroll, to cover payroll and other expenses as we're still trying to struggle through this pandemic. So I think that's been really great. Henry, if we could have the next slide. So I think that's been really great. We'll get the next slide. So I think that's been a really great result from within 9 months, 10 months of seeing this pandemic happen, to all of these things that we've been able to do, either whether it's communication and outreach to the members, or whether it's actual legislative victories. But really, what's the question now is how are we looking forward, and how are we going ahead? couple of issues that we worked on in the last pieces of legislation that we weren't able to get, but we're still working on it, is this Clean Start and the Back to Work tax credit. Basically, what we're looking for there is some tax assistance for the expenses that are incurred in just trying to reopen. How are we putting in these new systems, whatever they may be, if they're infrared or something, or is it just simply new people we need for cleaning spaces, and trying to achieve a credit for that. We did not get that in this legislation, but we'll continue to work on it. I think the COVID-19 liability protections, this is a really important issue in that, we're doing all of the things. I mean, if we stand back and just look at what liability means, when we have a government rule that we're following, or when we have legislation or laws on the books that basically say, you're following these processes, and so therefore what happens is you get liability, you can't be sued. This is a huge issue because right now there's nothing there, and we don't know where we could be, building owners or employers could be sued. So I think what we're looking at here is trying to find some legislation that would be acceptable to both sides of the aisle, that would allow for a federal standard on liability protections. I know the states, and I know Florida has been doing a great job at pushing through those programs or those policies, but we're really trying to get it at the state level. Mr. McConnell had some problems with it, which is why it was not included in HR 133, but we're going to see what the new administration thinks about that. And then, of course, the new, the pandemic risk and business interruption insurance. I mean, the number one issue here is that even those businesses that had business interruption insurance and they believed that they were covered, and when it came down to the fine print of the policy, pandemics were not covered. And so we, have been looking at and working to try to get either legislative language or policy pushed forward that would include that would cover that for future future pandemics. As I think everyone knows, you can't insure something, you insure yourself for something that's already happened. So it's a difficult situation. But what I want to talk about before we move on, I mean, you can leave the slide there, but I think what we really want to talk about is in really looking forward, what's going on with the current administration. And I'm going to look down at my phone here because I just asked for some information, from the transition team, from Biden's transition team, on what's in the upcoming stimulus proposals that he has. And I think this is going to be important to the next step in trying to bring everybody back online. So they're looking at $350 billion in state and local government aid. And I think instead of going directly to businesses, what they're looking for, what the Biden administration is looking is giving this money so that the states themselves would be able to administer economic programs to bring us back online. They are asking for a $1,400 direct stimulus payments to individuals. Importantly, there's a call on OSHA to issue a COVID protection standard. And I think what the concept and what the thinking is here is that if OSHA goes ahead and puts out the standard, this will play right into the concept of liability protection. In other words, here's a regulation, people are following the OSHA standard. And of course, if you're following a government issued standard, that provides you with liability protection for being sued. So we'll see where that's going, but this is the way that they're thinking. We're looking at, what have they got here? This just came in, so I'm sort of giving you the information just as we're getting it. Henry had mentioned this before, bringing the buses back online. They're looking, buses and metro and whatnot, $20 billion in relief to public transit. I think that the main concept there is to address exactly what Henry was talking about, which is we need to make sure that people feel comfortable in getting back in the public transportation so they can get to the city centers, so they can get to the buildings as they begin to reopen. And then there's a lot of other stuff, but I'm just going to cover one more point, which is $15 billion in small business grants. And I think what the Biden administration is looking at is, instead of continuing to support paycheck protection, that the federal government should most likely be giving grants directly to small businesses. And then they would be able to use that funding in a way that was best for them. So obviously a restaurant is going to use funding a little bit different than a retail establishment or a small grocery store or different types of things. So that's what they're thinking. And so I'm not sure where that is going to go. Obviously, politically, there's going to be a very close division in the Senate with 50-50 and the vice president voting on moving stuff forward, but there's still what we call cloiture rules, which apply to legislation like this. So we'll see where things are going, but I think that is what's happening on the federal level, and probably where we're going to go in the very near future. I'm sorry, my cat is deciding to visit. So I guess we just touch briefly on some of the state and local things that are going on. This is actually really important, this essential personnel. We were very concerned that building owners and facility managers were not going to be considered to be essential personnel as we started to reopen the economy. And I know BOMA worked with CDC and CISA to define very clear language that included our workers and our employees in this language. And it was transmitted to the state as part of the guideline. What we've seen is that most states have adopted that language directly. What we've also seen is that some states have actually improved upon that. So the state of California, for example, instead of classifying them 1C, which is right before the general public gets vaccinated, they actually classified them as 1B, which is after healthcare workers, realizing the importance that these folks play in reopening buildings. We've produced some material for you. We've got a one-page background on how that's going to go forward, and you can also get that on BOMA.com. For health screening, we produced a policy resource letter, sample letter, arguing priority level mandates. Policies have largely focused on employer level mandates or self-monitoring for health screening. We're very concerned that that would be put on building owners or tenants. We don't think that that's appropriate, so we continue to work on that. Again, liability protections, as we talked about, the safe harbor at the state level. We do know that 8 states have passed bills and many more are considering legislation to make that into law. And just wrapping up here on vaccine prioritization, which is an issue that is coming up and we're very concerned about. We have produced the one-page sample letter in case you are unable to, in case your state has decided to go in a different direction. So in case you would like to engage on that. And as I had said earlier, some states have already specified our property as 1C. But we've also started a process where we're going to be tracking all of the states, and we're going to provide that to everyone out through the various listservs or through the website as soon as that project is completed. So we could have the next slide. So I think this is just a little bit of a discussion on what we can do to help you. I mean, BOMA National International is here to help you folks, and we just want to make sure that you realize that we're here and available. So if you need strategic assistance, if there's something going on in the state level, that we could help draft a letter. I know BOMA Florida chapters in BOMA Florida are fantastic at this. I was just reading earlier about the success that you made on state income tax reduction. So there's a lot of great things that you do, but we are here to help, and you can contact me through BOMA or the staff. All kinds of things that we can help you with. We have the next. So on state and local advocacy, I mean, trending issues, what we've seen here is we just have been working on, and the staff has been working on, a series of policy briefs, climate policies, animals in the workspace, e-scooters and mobility. What we're trying to do here is to really get out in very succinct information, one-pagers, on all of the topics that are coming up. I know we're going to be working on a number of these coming up in the future. These are all available to be downloaded at BOMA.org. And so I encourage you to take a look at those materials. And I think here, I just want to make sure, just one last push for the winter business meeting. We're going to be having, of course, all of our advocacy meetings, but all of the other meetings about the things that go on at BOMA International. And we'd encourage you to sign up. It's free to join, but you have to sign up and join us at those meetings. Wanted to touch base on the civil unrest. One of the things that we have obviously all seen is the events of January 6th and what's really going on right now in Washington, D.C. I know Henry touched on it, but we're actually not used to having, National Guard people all over the place with guns everywhere we walk. So it's been very upsetting, but difficult for us. But I think that our members are having the same problem. They're having these kinds of things happen in the state capitals where our buildings are. What we've tried to do here is develop civil unrest document that kind of gives you a little bit of background on the issue and then illustrates some of the best practices to make sure that this civil unrest and these kind of violent protests, that they mitigate any kind of harm that could happen to the building or to the people that work in them. So this is available on the website. The other thing I wanted to mention on this is that last week what we did was a webinar where we brought in some folks from Allied Security and others to speak about this issue, giving you best practices. I don't know if any of you were able to attend that, but the actual presentation is available on the website, so you can watch the presentation and get that information out there. I think it's really important stuff. So anyway, just going to wrap it up. So I was looking at these and I'm always amazed at the great story that organizations have to tell. And when I looked at BOMA, International BOMA Florida's, snapshot of how we impact the state economy, it's contributed 7.9 billion, annually to the economy, 65,000 jobs, generated $255 million in salaries and income. When I look at the kind of contributions that you make to the economies and it's each state economy, it's just phenomenal. And it's really a great story. We work in advocacy, and remember what that really means is that we're asking politicians to help us do things, to help us with better tax treatment, to help us make sure that the real estate industry is thriving and growing. And how do we get them to vote for us? We tell them this story, that we contribute to the state economy. We create jobs. We also create people that may vote for you if you're supportive of our industry. And I think that when I look at this, it's just a way to go forward. And I think you all need to be very proud of what you contribute to the state of Florida. And that's what I have to say for today. So if there's any questions, Henry, I'm not sure how we're doing.
Melanie and Rick, let's kick it back to you, and we're open to any questions if you'd like.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Henry and Dawn. Does anyone have any questions for either of them? All right, forever hold your peace. All right, so, did someone have something? Okay. Well, we appreciate you guys again providing these informative and important updates on everything that BOMA International is doing for us. So we really appreciate it. Now I'm going to turn it over to Rick for a surprise that he has for Henry and Dawn, as well as BOMA Jax. So Rick, take it over.
So typically we would give you one of our coveted BOMA Jacksonville cutting boards, but because we can't do that in person, we have come up with our own BOMA Jacksonville mask that we are offering today for the first time. All proceeds will go to BOMA International's PAC. I know a lot of the other locals have done that, but this is a good way for us to, as members here in Jacksonville, to show our appreciation for everything that you guys do up in DC. So the website is currently live. you can purchase one of these masks for $20. And as it just opened today, anybody that is in and purchases a mask between now and Monday will be put in a drawing and will get a $50 gift card. So if you'll go to the website, bomajacksonville.org, go to events, and you'll see a little tab in there where you can get your mask. But you know, we've always been as supportive as we can of the BOMA International PAC. And we thought having you two guys on board today, what a great day to roll out this new program that we have. So.
Oh yeah, well, thank you for doing that. That's terrific. And I am going to purchase one and participate, but you cannot pick my name. Do not do that.
Okay.
But thank you so much. That's really nice.
All right. Thank you, Melanie.
All right. Thank you, Rick. All right. So to wrap things up, don't forget to like us on Facebook, and you can also check out our Facebook page for all upcoming events, as well as our website. It's being uploaded with our 2021 events. So as we close out today, I just have a few final updates. We are now calling our luncheons a speaker series. So starting next month, we're going to move our speaker series to 11 to 12 instead of 1 to 2 like it was today. And Rick will send a calendar invite to you so you can keep updated on the correct time. We have lots of events coming up for 2021 that we're planning right now for you. So like I said, keep your eye out on Facebook and the website and your emails and newsletters. So there's lots of ways to find out what's going on with BOMA Jacksonville. And don't forget, you can always invite an industry friend, emerging professional, which is someone who has less than 5 years of experience in the industry, or any of your engineering staff to attend any of our events. And I look forward to seeing you next week at Coffee Talk, and hopefully next month for another great speaker series. So with that, that concludes the BOMA Luncheon today. Does anyone have anything? Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Thank you both.